Alright, so here's a couple of Titan builds that you can use to farm this week's Master Cataclysm encounter on Challenge Mode in Root of Nightmares. If you do this, it is on average a 5-minute run, and that means that every 5 minutes you will get a random guaranteed Adept Root of Nightmares weapon, along with high stat discipline armor. So if you pair that with resilience on your ghost mod, you're going to have very spiky, very high stat armor in resilience and discipline. Yeah, I've gotten tons of pieces of armor on all three classes, and yeah, super good. You're also going to get cores, prisms, and shards. So you know, I've just been doing this all week. I actually really enjoy Root of Nightmares. Mainly this, I think this first encounter might be my favorite. It's got a good amount of challenge, and yeah, it's a great farm. So for the first build here, I'm using Sunbreaker, and I wanted to do a stronghold build for funsies. You know, I could have gone with Synthos, I could have gone with Worm God, I could have gone with Lorelei, I could have gone with Precious Scars. You know, all the typical ways of playing Sunbreaker, just running around, throwing your hammer, stacking Roaring Flame, just doing punches. But Strongholds is very effective. It has a little bit of it's a different play style entirely. You don't want to be crutching on your throwing hammer. You want to be on your sword pretty much all the time. When you block, you build up perfect guard stacks, and then when you hit an enemy, you get restoration ×2 for an amount of time that is dependent on the amount of perfect guard stacks that you have. So that is something that you want to take note of, especially if you're not on the solar subclass, because there's no way to you know, refresh the timer on restoration ×2. So you want to build up perfect guard stacks more so on other subclasses than solar. If you're on solar, then you just use Ember of Empyrean. Once you get that, you know, if you have one single stack of perfect guard, you know, you just block for a second, take damage, immediately strike an enemy with your sword, you get restoration ×2. Even if it's only for a couple seconds, as long as you can get another solar kill, then you're going to extend the timer up to 12 seconds of restoration ×2. This is the only way that you can get restoration ×2 on Titan. You know, other than that, Warlock is really the only subclass that has access to restoration ×2. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to die if you got resto ×2 up. And it's also pretty hard to die when you have unlimited guard on your sword. And that allows you to play into, you know, a playstyle where you can really go around, revive your teammates, block damage, pull the Tormentor's aggro. I was being fairly aggressive with trying to pull the Tormentor's aggro, because I found out on my first try while blocking, the Tormentor wasn't able to grab me. He tried to grab me, and I immediately just popped out of his hand, and I was still blocking with my sword. So I thought, oh wow, you can actually totally avoid Tormentors with Strongholds, but it's kind of glitchy. Like if you lose your guard for a second, then boom, you're dead. So I don't really advise that you run around blocking the Tormentor, but you can do it situationally if you need to. I don't know if you actually see me do it in this footage, but yeah, that is something to take note of. As far as the sword that I'm using here to block and to get restoration ×2, I'm using Throne Cleaver, which is the Titan-specific legendary sword that you can get from Season of the Defiant by focusing the engrams at the helm. You can get 5 red bores, you can craft it, you can put Surrounded on it. This is my ad clear version / utility version. I don't need high damage perks for doing boss damage and stuff like that. I just went with Tireless Blade and Incandescent. That way I could do ad clear, set off ignitions, make sunspots, scorch the enemies, etc. And with Tireless Blade you get a ton of ammo. It's, you know, Tireless Blade is basically what Lament has. So I mean, technically you could use Lament here as well, and you can add clear with Lament. You can take care of the barriers, but I haven't used my Throne Cleaver all that much, so I wanted to use it here, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I mean, look how quick it takes care of, you know, barriers and everything. It's, you know, maybe not quite as good as a 1-2 punch Frenzy Blade from Strand Titan with Banner of War, but overall, still very effective. So yeah, I highly advise you give it a try if you want to mix up the monotony of running around throwing your hammer. Because if you notice here, I'm not using a throwing hammer, I'm using hammer strike, because I want to be on my sword all the time. I don't want to switch off my sword to all of a sudden run around throwing, using my hammer instead. I want to be getting restoration ×2 and just doing my ag clear with my sword. So hammer strike is going to allow me to get in and out of situations very fast. If I hit an enemy with hammer strike, it sets off an instant ignition, creates sunspots. I get my radiant that way, so it's perfectly fine for that. And hammer strike is very good. Also, because we have such easy access to restoration ×2, you can give up the healing aid and you can go with like a thermite grenade, which puts out a lot of scorch. And as long as you're using your hammer strike and your grenade often enough, you can actually build up your roaring flame stacks. So yeah. Onto the Strand Titan variant. This is the typical Strand Synthos build that most people use. So I don't really feel like I'm providing a whole lot of value here. It's just more gameplay for entertainment's sakes, and yeah, Strand is surging this week, so why not take advantage of that? Just make sure that you tailor your artifact, basically, take off a couple of the solar ones, put on Horde Shuttle, put on Unraveling Rounds. Even if you're not using Michael's Reverence, right? So for the weapon choices here. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention on my Sunbreaker build with Strongholds, I was using Arbalist, because with kinetic dexterity, that way if I'm not radiant for whatever reason, in the middle of sorting a champion, I can pull out Arbalist, hit it with one shot, and continue on with my sword. However, on Berserker here, I'm using a sidearm to break barriers, because Unraveling Rounds, even though it's juiced up and it's more accessible with the seasonal artifact, Unraveling Rounds doesn't last for very long, and it's not super reliable, and yeah, I wouldn't count on that ever alone to take out barriers. I would always make sure that you have some way to take out barriers, that it's not reliant on Unraveling Rounds. Like, it's much easier to rely on Radiant as a subclass verb to take care of barriers as opposed to Unraveling Rounds. But yeah, so I do have Unraveling Rounds going for me, so every now and then, I might be able to rely on that, but I'm not, because I'm using a sidearm, so no matter what, Michael's Reverence can break through the barrier shields, and it can do ag clear. I recently crafted this Michael's with Perpetual Motion and Frenzy. Frenzy is preference here, but I would say Perpetual Motion is necessary. It's basically going to turn the sidearm. It's going to give it like SMG stability and range, as long as you're perpetually moving around. If you get 2 stacks with the way that I built it, I'm basically max stability, which you really need, because this thing, being the frame that it is, it's all over the place on full auto unless you have high stability and fairly good recoil. But yeah, look, it does a lot of work in this encounter, because it shoots through enemy shields, it breaks barriers. With Horde Shuttle and Unraveling, it's just producing Threadlings and Unraveling Rounds all over the place. It's giving me orbs from Harmonic Siphon. And then I'm just using 2 Void Weapons for my main damage, for proccing 1-2 punch and weakening enemies. So Tractor Cannon. I did realize, though, that Tractor Cannon was fairly irrelevant here. You can take out most barriers with just 1 shotgun shot and 1 frenzy blade. You don't need to tractor them. Worst case scenario with an anti-barrier, you might have to use 2 frenzy blades or a couple extra shotgun shots. But yeah, it's very rare that you're actually gonna feel like you need to use tractor cannons. So yeah, I would definitely go with whatever weapons that you want here. All I'm saying is you need something for barriers, and you need something for to proc your 1-2 punch. Yeah, so this is I think in this run too, you had a couple of Strand Titans. Before this, I was in a fire team where there was like 3 or 4 of us. and the tormentors were dying instantly, and it was a little bit overkill. Yeah, but yeah, Strand Titan is definitely broken. I'm sure it's gonna get nerfed. I wouldn't be surprised if 1-2 punch, if they just made it so that 1-2 punch doesn't work with grapple melee, maybe even frenzied blade. I mean, it doesn't work with throwing hammer, so why should it work with, unlimited grapple melees with the navigator, right? It's the only subclass in the game that could do what it does. There's nothing that even comes close, so it's definitely, there's definitely a balance issue there. But that's not really what I'm talking about in this video. If you're farming, you take advantage of whatever advantages you can get in the game. And then, I'm giving you a couple builds here, one that's unique, so that you can at least have some fun and be effective at the same time and not just do the same old thing. But yeah, regardless, you want to be doing this effectively. You don't want to die. You want to make sure you can take care of all the key targets, and that way you and your fire team can get this done like every 5 minutes. It literally takes from the moment that you start the encounter to the moment it ends, killing 3 tormentors, maybe 4. It's between 5 and 5.5 minutes. And then, you're spending like most of your time in the loading screen, waiting, in orbit and getting back to the checkpoint. So if you have the checkpoint saved, then, you might have to wait a minute in between each encounter, but yeah, you can get like 10 adepts per hour. So it's pretty good. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. I'm going to work on Warlock. Hopefully get that out today. If not, I'll catch you later. Take care.